My little girl burst into my room at 2 in the morning, crying and holding her belly. "Mommy, there are tiny fish swimming inside me," she whimpered. I assumed it was just a nightmare and checked her forehead, no fever. But she was drenched in cold sweat, curled up tight like she was trying to disappear into herself. Fear hit me like a wave. I grabbed her, wrapped her in a blanket, and drove straight to the children's emergency room. The fluorescent lights there made everyone look drained and pale. The young doctor on duty ordered an immediate ultrasound. I carried my daughter, Vera, down the empty hallway while she sobbed that she was scared. I promised her I wasn't going anywhere. The technician ran the wand over her stomach in silence, his frown deepening with every passing second. When he finished, he said nothing to me, just told me to bring the results straight to the ER doctor. I rushed back, Vera trembling in my arms. The moment the doctor looked at the scan, his face went white. Without a word of explanation, he stood so abruptly his chair screeched against the floor, and walked out toward the nurse's station. I followed him to the doorway and heard him on the phone, his voice tight with urgency. He was reporting a suspected case of severe child abuse, describing multiple foreign objects lodged in a 5-year-old's abdomen. The word abuse detonated in my mind. Before I could even process it, 2 police officers came through the doors. They didn't ask how Vera was doing. Instead, the first question out of their mouths was, "Who is her primary caregiver?" My legs gave out and I sank to the floor, still holding her. Later, in a stark interrogation room, while Vera was wheeled off for emergency surgery, 2 officers, Collins and Taylor, sat across from me. Taylor did most of the questioning. He told me the scan had revealed a large cluster of small, powerful magnetic beads in Vera's intestines, banned for children because once swallowed, they pull toward each other through the intestinal walls, causing perforations and life-threatening infections. I insisted we didn't own anything like that. Taylor pressed harder, clearly skeptical of a stay-at-home mother somehow missing this. Then my husband David burst in, followed by his mother Agnes. Instead of comforting me, David immediately accused me of negligence, demanding to know how I could have let this happen. Agnes rushed to David's side, sobbing theatrically about her precious granddaughter, but her eyes kept flicking toward me with something colder than grief. Between the 2 of them, they painted a picture of an inattentive, careless mother, and I could feel the room turning against me. Officer Taylor slid an X-ray across the table, showing where the magnets had clustered and torn through Vera's intestines. He said they didn't believe this was accidental, someone had likely fed them to her deliberately. His gaze moved slowly from me, to David, to Agnes, before settling back on me, since I'd been the only adult home before David returned from his trip. We waited in silence outside the operating room, the air thick with tension. Finally the surgeon emerged, pale and grim. He told us Vera had survived, but they'd removed 36 magnetic beads and had to remove a damaged section of her bowel, permanent damage to her digestive system. He added that the magnets had likely been inside her for over a day, and asked pointedly why we'd waited so long to bring her in. David rounded on me furiously, and Agnes chimed in with cutting remarks about how I spent my time instead of watching our daughter. I ignored them both and asked the surgeon one question: could a 5-year-old swallow 36 of these on her own? He shook his head. The beads have a sharp metallic taste, and the sheer number made it almost impossible unless someone had fed them to her gradually, disguising them as something else, like candy. The room went dead silent. David's anger stalled into confusion. But in Agnes's eyes, just for an instant, I caught a flash of pure panic. Something clicked into place. No one in that hallway was on my side, not my husband, not his mother, not the police. If I wanted answers, I'd have to find them myself. I called my friend Amy and told her I needed her help. When I tried to leave for home, David blocked my path, accusing me of running to destroy evidence. Agnes threw herself at my feet, begging me not to leave Vera's side, insisting this wasn't the time to throw a tantrum. I remembered the small security camera I'd installed in our living room after a string of neighborhood break-ins, a camera that had likely caught everything. I understood then, David and Agnes weren't afraid I'd run, they were afraid of what that camera might reveal. I called Officer Collins on the spot, right in front of them, and told him my husband and mother-in-law were physically preventing me from retrieving evidence from my house. I watched their faces shift from outrage to sheer terror as I spoke. Collins told me to stay put and sent officers to escort me home. David tried to grab the phone from me. Agnes's crying suddenly sounded hollow and poorly timed. When I mentioned the camera footage, both of their expressions cracked. Officers Collins and Taylor arrived quickly, along with backup, and made it clear that no one, not David, not Agnes, would touch anything inside the house before them. My friend Amy showed up too, the only person who looked at me without suspicion, and grabbed my hand in support. We drove to the house together, trailed by the others. Collins told me quietly that I'd done the right thing by calling. Inside, everything sat exactly as I'd left it: Vera's slippers, her open coloring book, a crayon rolled under a chair, and my chest ached at the sight. I pointed the officers to the corner where the camera sat. Agnes tried to downplay it, asking if the old thing even worked. It had, just the day before. With Amy's help, my shaking hands finally got the laptop open to review yesterday's footage. Everyone watched in silence as the recording played, Vera coloring at the table, me passing through with laundry, and then Agnes sitting down beside her granddaughter with a warm, doting smile. On the recording, Agnes told Vera she could have a special secret treat, mermaid pearls, she called them, and encouraged her to eat them despite Vera asking if her mother would approve. Agnes told her that if she told me, our secret would be taken away. My stomach dropped as I watched my daughter trust her completely, unaware of what she was being fed. The footage continued, Vera commenting that they tasted strange, that the fish were swimming inside her, then Agnes calmly gathering up whatever remained, wiping the table, and hiding the container in her purse before Vera came back. The room fell into stunned silence. I turned to Agnes and asked flatly how many she'd given Vera. She blurted out, "I didn't know there'd be 36, before catching herself. David stared at his own mother in horror. I told her she had used my daughter's body as a weapon to punish me. She tried to defend herself, claiming she thought Vera would just get a stomachache, that maybe then David would finally see I wasn't fit to raise our daughter, that I kept Vera too close, too controlled. David looked at his mother like a stranger. Officer Taylor moved in and took her into custody as she screamed and thrashed, insisting she only meant to prove a point, never intending real harm. Neighbors watched from their windows as she was led away in handcuffs, screaming my name in accusation even as the truth had just been laid bare. I felt no triumph, only exhaustion. Vera was still recovering, and nothing about this had been a victory, just a survival. When David reached for me afterward, I stepped back. He admitted he hadn't asked what happened to Vera, only what I had done. That, I told him, was the moment our marriage effectively ended. He'd chosen suspicion over trust when it mattered most. At the hospital, Vera woke near dawn, groggy and pale, and asked if the little fish were gone. I told her they were. She murmured that Grandma had told her not to say anything, that I'd be upset and take their secret away. When David appeared in the doorway, Vera flinched and shrank back, a small, telling moment that shattered whatever composure he had left. Officers later confirmed the investigation had shifted entirely away from me. Agnes's messages to friends and relatives, recovered from her phone, revealed months of plotting, spreading rumors that I was neglectful and unfit, hoping to convince David that Vera would be better off without me controlling her upbringing. I filed for a protective order barring Agnes from any contact with Vera, and began the process of separating from David, seeking full custody with only closely supervised visitation for him. Relatives who tried to soften what Agnes had done, arguing she was still family, that prison would destroy her, found me unmoved. Feeding a child pain wasn't a lapse in judgment, it was cruelty dressed as love. The story became local news, and Agnes's friends and community quietly turned away from her. At trial, the footage played again for the court, and the prosecutor called it exactly what it was, a child used as a weapon. The surgeon testified to the severity of Vera's injuries and confirmed I had rushed her in the moment I recognized something was wrong. Officer Collins testified that I'd asked them to preserve evidence, not destroy it. David admitted under oath that he'd blocked me from leaving and had believed his mother over his own wife. When asked who he protected first while his daughter was in surgery, he had no answer. Agnes was convicted and sentenced to years in prison, permanently barred from any contact with Vera. The divorce that followed was almost anticlimactic compared to the trial. I received primary custody, David's visitation came with strict conditions, and Agnes's name could never again be spoken to Vera as someone safe. He asked for forgiveness outside the courthouse, admitting he'd let his mother's influence cloud his judgment, but I told him plainly he could become a better father, never my husband again. Agnes wrote to Vera once from prison, I returned the letter unopened. Recovery was slow, medical appointments, painful nights, quiet fears about locked doors and broken trust, but I taught Vera that real safety wasn't about locks, it was about people who actually listened to her. A year later, we were living in a new home, one Agnes had never set foot in. Vera still had hard days, but she laughed more, grew basil in paper cups, and stopped asking about her grandmother. One afternoon I found her drawing fish again, but these were bright, smiling, harmless fish on paper, nowhere near her body. I held her close, understanding that while the wound would always be part of our story, we had finally, truly, found our way to safety.